Imagine you are renovating your house. You take a sledgehammer to a wall in your basement, expecting to find, well, just dirt, or maybe some old pipes. But instead, you find a tunnel. You step inside, the air is cool and stale. You walk a few feet, and the tunnel opens up into a room, then another room, then a staircase leading down into the darkness. This isn't just a cellar, it isn't a bunker. In 1963, a man in Turkey accidentally discovered an entire city buried beneath the earth, a city 18 stories deep, a city capable of hiding 20,000 people from the world above. This is Derinkuyu, the ancient metropolis that shouldn't exist. Who built it? Why did they hide? And how did they carve a skyscraper out of solid rock without modern technology? Let's dig in. The discovery of Derinkuyu sounds like the start of a horror movie. It happened in the Cappadocia region of Turkey. The locals knew there were caves around, sure. People had used shallow caves for storage for centuries. But when that man knocked down his wall, he revealed something much more complex than a storage room. Archaeologists rushed in. What they found blew their minds. They found a tunnel that went down and down and down. Level 1, stables for animals. Level 2, kitchens with blackened suits still on the ceilings. Level 3, storage rooms for wine and oil. They kept descending. By the time they stopped, they had mapped out 18 distinct levels, reaching 280 feet underground. Think about that. That is deep enough to bury the Statue of Liberty up to her torch. But this wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a fully functioning city. It had schools, it had churches, it had communal meeting halls. It even had a graveyard. It was designed for long-term survival. But survival from what? Before we get to the why, we have to talk about the how, because from an engineering standpoint, Derinkuyu is a nightmare. If you dig a hole that deep, you have two major problems: gravity and oxygen. The rock in Cappadocia is volcanic tough, soft enough to carve with hand tools, but hard enough to support weight. That explains the carving, but how do you breathe 18 stories down? The builders created a massive ventilation system that rivals modern mines. They dug more than 50 vertical shafts, some going all the way to the surface. These acted like giant lungs for the city. The air pressure was carefully calculated so that fresh oxygen flowed all the way to the bottom level. Even more genius, they didn't connect every floor to every shaft. This was a safety feature. If an enemy poured poison or smoke down one shaft, it wouldn't kill the whole city. And speaking of enemies, that brings us to the most terrifying part of Derinkuyu. This city wasn't built for comfort. It was built for war. It was the ultimate panic room. As archaeologists explored the tunnels, they found massive circular stone doors. These millstones weighed over 1,000 pounds each. Here's the twist: they could only be opened or closed from the inside. If an army attacked, the residents would retreat into the tunnels. They would roll these massive stones across the corridor, sealing it completely. There was a hole in the center of the stone, not for a key, but for a spear. You could stab the attackers while they tried to push the rock. It gets worse for the invaders. The tunnels were intentionally narrow and low. You had to crouch to walk through them. This meant enemy soldiers couldn't run, they couldn't fight in formation, and they certainly couldn't use long swords. They were forced to enter one by one, hunched over, walking blindly into the dark. And if they did manage to break through, the city had escape routes, kilometers of tunnels connecting to other underground cities nearby. Yes, there are more of them. So who was this paranoid? Who needed to hide 20,000 people under the earth? This is where history gets murky. We don't have a signed blueprint. Some archaeologists think the Hittites started it around 1200 BC. Remember the Bronze Age collapse, the apocalypse where civilization fell apart? That would be a great time to hide underground. Others believe it was the Phrygians in the 8th century BC, but the strongest evidence points to early Christians escaping Roman persecution and later escaping Arab raids in the 7th century AD.
We know Christians were there because we found chapels and baptism fonts underground. Imagine that, an entire generation growing up in the dark, praying by torchlight, listening for the sound of boots on the rock above. They didn't live there permanently. It was a shelter. When the coast was clear, they went back to their farms. When the dust cloud of an army appeared on the horizon, they vanished into the earth. Let's take a moment to imagine what life was actually like down there. We marvel at the engineering, but the reality must have been terrifying. 20,000 people, livestock, goats, chickens, horses, all crammed into dark tunnels. The smell must have been overwhelming, the noise of animals, crying babies, and thousands of people echoing off the stone walls. There was no sunlight for months at a time. Psychologists urge us to consider the mental toll, living in constant fear, knowing that the only thing separating you from a massacre is a stone door and a few feet of rock. And yet they survived. They built wineries to make wine, probably to keep morale up. They built schools to teach their children. They refused to let their culture die, even when the sun was taken away from them. Derinkuyu is a reminder that human ingenuity isn't just about building skyscrapers that touch the clouds. Sometimes it's about digging deep enough to survive the storm. Today, you can visit Derinkuyu. You can walk down those cramped tunnels. You can touch the soot on the ceiling from fires that burned 1,000 years ago. But remember, we have only excavated a fraction of it, and it connects to other cities we haven't even mapped yet. It makes you wonder, if we found this by accident behind a basement wall, what else is still down there, waiting in the dark? What do you think? Would you survive a month in an underground city, or would the claustrophobia get you first? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unknown, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are just scratching the surface of history. This is Era by Era. Thanks for watching.